Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Brandao Collection. I thought it would be time to do another collection room tour. It's been about a year since the last time we did one of these types of videos, and there's been a lot of changes to the dynamic of our channel, the type of content that we produce, and of course, what pieces are still remaining in the collection since the last time we did one of these, so I thought it would be fun to go through and look at that. For those of you who have seen our previous videos from other years, when it came to our collection room, you may notice a lot of things that are still here, but you might also notice a lot of things that we've sold or they've just moved on one way or the other since the last time we have shared with everyone. So before we dive into and take a look at all of the different shelves here and the different information, if you haven't already, please leave a like. It helps that all-powerful YouTube algorithm get our content out there to help our channel continue to grow and bring you awesome content. If you aren't already, subscribe to our channel and hit that bell notification to be notified when we post brand new videos. We're always doing videos on theme park history, pop culture history, autographs, comic books, hot toys, and much, much more. So let's take a look and jump into what is currently in our collection room. We are going to start with the first case on the main wall, the right side case. All the way at the top, we have the three Spider-Man from Spider-Man No Way Home. You have the integrated suit, the Tom Holland one. Then in the center there, you have the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man. This one I do have a modification I did by a third-party set of eyes to have that more white looking, more accurate to the movies. I think it definitely enhances the figure significantly compared to the more gray, dull versions that came stock on the original Hot Toys figure. Then we have the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, or Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man as they like to say, there in the center. I have them there posed in those dynamic poses, and the integrated suit version, I actually have a custom web shooter kind of effect there that I created using some white metal wire that I purchased off of Amazon, and then just spent some time molding it into it look just like web shooters, and I think it does add a really dynamic look to the Spider-Man figures, especially compared to the web effects that you naturally get with most Hot Toys Spider-Man figures. Even though I do think they're getting a little bit better with the recent releases, I don't think they're as dynamic as maybe something like this that you can create using some materials at home. Then behind the Spider-Man, we have the upgraded suit, or kind of the more end of the movie version of the Green Goblin there with the Willem Dafoe head sculpt. One of the best head sculpts I think in my entire collection, even though he is kind of hidden in the back here on the top of this Detolf shelf. I do think that this is an amazing figure, but sometimes, even though he goes along with the Spider-Man, he does get a little lost in my collection, so he's just propped in this spot for now, just because that's really the only spot that makes the most sense for him at the current moment. Now moving down to the first shelf inside the actual Detolf case, we have some Nightmare Before Christmas memorabilia. Mainly right there front and center is the book of the original poem written by Tim Burton, signed by Chris Sarandon, who is the voice of Jack Skellington, and Ken Page, who is the voice of Oogie Boogie. Unfortunately, Ken Page passed away last year in 2024, but he was such a pleasure to meet back at a local convention a few years ago when I got this signed by both of them. We have also on the shelf a little Zero shoulder piece from the Disney theme parks. We have a vintage Nightmare Before Christmas piggy bank still in its packaging from the 90s, and we have a statue that I purchased from the Disney store a few years ago that is a replica of the Jack Skellington that's at the top of the Haunted Mansion holiday entrance queue. So just a really fun shelf for my personal all-time favorite movie, the one that actually got me into loving movies in general, on top of course, Star Wars as well. Continuing down, we have our Back to the Future shelf there with my Marty McFly, the original Hot Toys Marty McFly, with the box signed by the original cast of the first movie. We have Michael J. Fox in there, Christopher Lloyd, Claudia Wells, Tom Wilson, Leah Thompson, on top of others. One of those prized possessions in my entire collection. If I had to sell every single piece that is in this collection room, this would probably be, if not the final, one of the final items that will remain in my collection until the last possible minute and the most dire circumstances. This is one of those pieces that will never leave my collection, and I am really, really proud to have it presented front and center right here to represent one of my all-time favorite movies. Another autograph piece that I'm really happy to have is this Hot Toys Crow figure from the original Crow film, signed by some of the cast members that were at a convention back roughly around the time this figure came out. So it's almost 10 years ago now, maybe like 8-9 years ago. We have Ernie Hudson on here. We have Sophia Shyness, who played Shelley. We have Tony Todd, rest in peace to him. We have Rochelle Davis, who played Sarah. And of course, right there in the center, we have James O'Barr, who is the creator of the character of the Crow. He wrote and created the original comic book that the character and the movie, of course, is based on. And of course, we have Brandon Lee there as the Crow in his Hot Toys figure form. One of the favorite figures in my collection. I think it's very unique compared to the generic kind of Star Wars and Marvel figures that are constantly pumped out by Hot Toys. It's nice to have these kind of one-off, more unique figures that Hot Toys have made over the years represented in the collection. And the last shelf for this case, we have, as of right now, the only Darth Vader that I have on display, which is the battle-damaged Darth Vader from the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus TV show. This is one of the best Darth Vaders I think Hot Toys has ever made. I love the head sculpt of seeing Anakin's burned face there underneath the battle-damaged helmet with the different accessories. And of course, I have it plugged into the USB-C that's going out the back of the DTOF to allow him to light up whenever I turn everything on in the display. So right now he has a front and center spot, sharing the shelf just by himself. He's not sharing it with anybody at the current moment, because Darth Vader being one of my all-time favorite Star Wars characters, if not my favorite Star Wars character, and then having the best version of him, in my opinion, there in my collection as it stands right now. So let's keep moving along over to the middle DTOF right next to the case that we just went through. Moving back to the top and now to the middle DTOF case, we have some more Spider-Man figures. Specifically, we have the homemade suit, from Far From Home. And we also have the Scarlet Spider suit from the first Spider-Man PS4 video game. Both of these versions of Spider-Man extremely posable. I'm not afraid of the suits getting damaged on these specific Hot Toys Spider-Man figures just based on the materials that were used. A lot of these Hot Toys Spider-Man figures, the materials over time seem like they may get permanently damaged if you put them in any extreme Spider-Man poses, but these I'm not afraid of at all. So that's why I do have them in some more dynamic poses right there at the top of the specific case itself. Moving down, we have some of the newest figures in our collection that joined us last year. We have Deadpool, specifically the version from Deadpool and Wolverine, and we have the Hono Studios Wolverine, which is a comic book version of the character. I have the two of them side by side here, kind of representing Deadpool and Wolverine, the movie, waiting for the actual Hugh Jackman Wolverine to be officially released. I do have that one on pre-order, and I plan on having them side by side once I do have it in the collection officially, but I think it looks pretty awesome having Deadpool with the official comic book version of Wolverine next to him. The Hono Studios Wolverine, for it being a entry-level type of collectible, as Hot Toys likes to call it, I do think they did a fantastic job with providing a great quality figure for a great price, especially for those who are just getting into the world of 1/6 scale collecting. And I think it's a great opportunity to give us more of these comic book versions of the characters on top of the movie version, so you can choose which one is your preferred version to look at. Then below there we have our shelf that represents the original Star Wars, or as it's now known as A New Hope, with some of the first ever figures that Hot Toys ever produced from the Star Wars line. We have, of course, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, we have the set of Chewbacca and Han Solo, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The C-3PO is a Sideshow collectible C-3PO from a while ago, a little bit over 10 years old as well for that one. And then the Hot Toys R2-D2 is there in front. So all of them are Hot Toys with the exception of the C-3PO figure. But I think these figures have held up pretty well considering they came out, I think it was 10 years ago. I think it was around 2015 that Hot Toys initially got the official license to produce Star Wars figures, and they started with the original Star Wars film, put out these figures. Of course, they've put out even better likenesses of Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill in the meantime since then. I would be interested to see if Hot Toys revisited the New Hope line of characters and released new versions, because of course we got Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi versions of these characters as well. But I think in the meantime, these are fantastic figures that really hold up amongst even the newer figures that Hot Toys has been producing in the last couple years. Now we have what's left of my Hot Toys Mandalorian collection. We have the Durasteel Mando and the first version of the Beskar armor Mando with the child, as he was called at the time, which we now know is Grogu. Both of these Mandos have been modified. I went in and took the fat suits out that are underneath their costume and their armor to give them significant amount of additional posability now that that fat suit is not restricting them, and I think it's a fantastic, easy custom to do if you have these figures and if you're willing to go ahead and do it. It doesn't permanently damage the figure, but it does add some great posing opportunities. And then in the back there, we have the repainted armor Boba Fett from the second season of Mando. I'm happy that I have these three figures left over from Mando in the collection. As always, we have a little plaque there in the front signed by Brendan Wayne, who is one of the men in the suit, who has been there from day one, representing Mando and giving us the performance not only in the television show, but he's also going to be performing in the suit in the upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu movie next year. So super excited to see that when it officially comes out next year. The final shelf on this case includes some various types of Disney theme park merchandise, including a vintage Walt Disney World lunchbox there in the back. We have a patch from the 50th anniversary of the Magic Kingdom from when we went down and actually went during that time. Then the statue there, the chrome statue, is actually a gift for D23 fan club members from a couple years ago as part of that fan club gift. We have some pins that I purchased probably over 10 plus years ago now. So a couple different random things representing the Disney theme parks and Disney in general here on that final shelf. Moving up to the top of the final detail on this particular wall, we have the Mark 7 Iron Man armor from the first Avengers. This specifically is the die-cast version of the Mark 7. It is my personal favorite of all the Iron Man armors from the MCU films, so that's the reason why he's the leftover of all the Iron Man I used to have in my collection. And then of course we have Captain America, specifically the Endgame version of Captain America. Two of my favorite characters from the MCU. These are the only two versions of these characters that still remain after I've sold off pretty much all of them at this point. So they'll be sticking around right now, but since they're all the way up here on the top and kind of out of the way compared to the rest of the figures in my collection, I'm not sure how much longer they'll stick around, but for now they are here because they are the favorite versions of these characters that I've decided to keep around for at the current moment. Here we have a pose that I have lovingly borrowed from another YouTuber, specifically Posing with Peter, who had a great channel that gave you a lot of tips and tricks and examples of some awesome poses for your Hot Toys figures. I was rewatching his videos a few weeks ago and I saw this pose and I decided to give it a try. So I think it came out pretty awesome. It really does stand out there on the shelf, and I have the lightsaber for Qui-Gon hanging from his sleeve there. I have a little piece of wire that I tie to the end of the lightsaber, hit it in the sleeve, and it adds that extra dynamic movement and gives you the real sense of the scene from the Phantom Menace. So a really standout pose here in the collection. Here we have our kind of mix of Revenge of the Sith / the Clone Wars shelf. We have the Revenge of the Sith versions of both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. Of course, Anakin is not the currently released artisan version, which is a figure that I missed out on, and I refuse to pay the significant aftermarket price, even though, in my opinion, the figure looks incredible and significantly better than the one I have in my collection. But I am happy to have this representation of the character here next to the, currently at least, only version of Episode 3 Obi-Wan that they have released or announced up to the recording of this video at least. And then of course we have the first version of Captain Rex there in the back from Clone Wars. The Anakin I have here is actually right now has the head sculpt for the dark side version of Anakin. It is not the version that came with the figure originally, I did purchase just the regular light side Anakin, and then on the aftermarket, I purchased just the head sculpt of the original dark side one, and every now and then I swap out the heads depending on my personal preference of if I want good Anakin or I want full-on Darth Vader Anakin. So it will change up from time to time here based on the different head sculpts I have available. The remaining two shelves are kind of a hodgepodge mix of whatever left Star Wars Hot Toys figures I still have in my collection. This first one being a mix of Rogue One with the Star Wars sequel films. We have Rey and Kylo Ren from The Force Awakens, and we also have Jyn Erso and Director Krennic from Rogue One. Like I said, this shelf and then the next shelf we're going to talk about is just kind of a mix of whatever's left over that I haven't sold from the Star Wars Hot Toys stuff, some characters and representations of those characters that I love and want to kind of keep around for right now for the foreseeable future. But especially with Andor Season 2 ending recently, I went ahead and reposed Director Krennic and fell in love with that figure all over again because of his time, even if it's short, in Season 2 of Andor. And the last shelf on this particular detail case has the rest of the Star Wars figures. We have the Yoda figure from Empire Strikes Back. We have the updated version of Bespin Luke Skywalker, also with the Empire Strikes Back version of Princess Leia, which I have mentioned in many videos before. This is actually my personal favorite outfit of hers in all of the original trilogy. And we also have a Sand Trooper, just another leftover figure from the New Hope line that didn't fit in the shelf that I showed you earlier. So just a mix there of some of my leftover Star Wars Hot Toys figures, of characters and versions of those characters that I love and have stuck around in the collection through the rest of the Star Wars Hot Toys purge over the last couple years. Starting at the top of the final IKEA Detolf shelf, we have Ed 209 from the first Robocop film. This is the 2014 release of the figure. You can see some cracking there on the rubber dome since it is a figure that is a little bit over 10 years old now. Moving to the main shelf right below it, we have a representation of different of my favorite characters portrayed by my favorite actor, Johnny Depp. We have, of course, Captain Jack Sparrow. This is one of the older DX releases, specifically the one from On Stranger Tides. I think this figure still holds up, even though they did just recently release a artisan version of the character a few months ago, which I think looks great, but not so much for me to upgrade. I think I have a great representation of Jack Sparrow in my collection already. We have Johnny Depp as Sweeney Todd, another one of those, as I was talking about earlier with the Crow, a one-off character that stands out in the collection because it's different than just Marvel and Star Wars, so I think it's great to have this type of representation of these other types of movies and characters. And then in the back there, we have Johnny Depp as Ichabod Crane from Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, one of my personal favorite movies, and another, just like Robocop, one of the first R-rated films I watched as a kid, and I have some great memories of that associated to it. So that's why these are the three representations of my favorite actor, Johnny Depp, here in my Hot Toys collection. Speaking of Robocop, we have a shelf here that's a little bit mismatched with Robocop, the 2014 die-cast version of the figure right there. Also with the Sideshow Collectibles Freddy Kruger. Right behind him, we have the Trick or Treat Studios Freddy Krueger glove. So just a little bit of a diorama of some 80s characters, Robocop and Freddy Krueger. And as I mentioned earlier, some characters that are a big part of my childhood and me becoming a big lover of all things 80s films, whether that be action films, horror films, sci-fi, and everything in between. So even though we have sci-fi action with horror mixed on the shelf, I did think that they still kind of went together as you kind of talk it through that way. Here we have two of a more modern horror classics, I should say, between Trick or Treat and the more recent It films from It and It Chapter 2. The Pennywise that is made here from Hot Toys is actually a Chapter 2 version of the character, even though you can kind of use it for both versions and possibly even for the upcoming television show that's coming out later this year too. But I loved this representation by Bill Skarsgård. I actually have in a different room, I have a collection of every Pennywise Funko Pop that was released released. I even have one that was signed by Bill Skarsgård himself. I really love this representation of the Pennywise character, so I had to have at least one version of a 1/6 scale Pennywise in my collection. And then next to that, we have the Trick or Treat Studios version of Sam from the film Trick or Treat. I think this is a great figure, especially it wasn't produced by one of the big companies like Hot Toys or Sideshow Collectibles. It's a much smaller, very specific niche company that focuses just on horror products. Trick or Treat Studios, I think they did a great job, especially all things considered, and it is one of my favorite horror icons to come out in the last 20 years that now we can have here represented standing right next to Pennywise for these new modern horror classics. And to finally wrap things up on all of our detailed cases, and to wrap things up from a horror figure perspective, we have the last of our 1/6 scale horror classics. We have some modern stuff mixed in with the classic characters. Of course, we have the Nun from the Conjuring series. This is a figure from the company QMX, which I think is an amazing figure. I think the head sculpts it comes with are absolutely terrifying and fantastic for this figure, especially for how much the figure was when it originally came out. Then we have the Ghostface figure from Sideshow Collectibles, another great looking figure that really stands out in the collection, even though he is a very simple character altogether. We have Michael Myers, another figure from Trick or Treat Studios, who did the Sam figure I showed you earlier. And then we have a Jason Voorhees figure there in the back right. It is a custom figure that I made maybe 15 years ago using parts from old Sideshow figures from maybe 20 plus years ago. So a mix of mismatch of other figures, some paint, some random accessories and clothes that I found laying around from other figures, just a kind of idealized version of Jason Voorhees that I made myself, a kit bashed and painted and all that. So some great figures here. On the shelf, I actually have here a little fun fact. There's a little bottle of water right next to Jason Voorhees here on the shelf, and what that is it is water directly from Camp Crystal Lake itself, the actual lake where they filmed the original Friday the 13th in New Jersey, where you can go and actually attend tours. I did it a couple years ago, and we actually have a video here on the channel where you can watch our tour of the different filming locations and of the camp itself, and you can actually buy little vials where they took water from the lake and you can bring that home. So just something unique and fun to have here on the horror shelf. Moving away from the detailed cases and over to the main shelf that has our Disney theme park memorabilia, very heavily focused on vintage Disneyland memorabilia from the 1950s and 60s. We have a really great collection of items here. We have some original park maps from opening year. We have opening year book pamphlets that were handed out about the history and the story behind the different lands at Disneyland. We have, of course, some Walt Disney Funko Pops from a few years ago. I have on there some items from 1959, from the first major expansion of Disneyland when they added the Matterhorn, the monorail, and the submarine voyage. We have that vintage lunchbox there. It does have the thermos included with it, and a monorail board game as well. A couple other items scattered around the shelf include patches that came from actual cast member uniforms from the early days, some tickets from back when Disneyland used the tickets from the A to E tickets, a Mickey Mouse rotary phone from the 1970s. We have a mix of some Haunted Mansion merchandise, some Funko Pops, Lego, otherwise. As we keep moving along there, we have some different pins from over the years that I've collected. We do have a monorail kind of scale model. It is the die-cast monorail you can buy at the parks, but myself and my dad made a little stand to put it on so it represents what it looks like at Disneyland itself. There's another vintage Disneyland lunchbox, so I have that 1959 one, and then this one is an older one from the early days of when the park originally actually opened. And we also have a original pamphlet from the opening of the Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland in 1960 there in the frame, plus a lot of other things surrounding that you can see here that we haven't mentioned, but this is kind of my big homage and the standout pieces that I currently have in my Disney theme park collection. I'm always looking for new pieces to add to this specific collection, and of course I have many other different Disney theme park memorabilia that's not even on display currently. I do have some plans to make a video dedicated specifically to vintage Disneyland memorabilia. If that is something that you would be interested in watching, and if you want to see anything in particular, leave a comment below and let us know what exactly would you like us to focus on specifically when it comes to vintage Disneyland memorabilia. Right to the left side of my computer, where I do all of my editing and working, of course, is just kind of a mix of my television, also with some Star Wars figures. We have some vintage Star Wars figures that are graded, some ones that were actually my dad's when he was a kid, so a mix of some recent purchases plus some ones that have been in the family since the beginning. We have the original VHS box set that got me into Star Wars, the one that my dad purchased at Blockbuster for myself and my brother to watch, and also the vintage Empire Strikes Back VHS signed by the director Irvin Kershner. We have a Kylo Ren from The Last Jedi Hot Toys figure, the only Hot Toys in this corner of the room anymore. And we have a shelf at the top that used to be covered in all of my Hot Toys Star Wars figures, and then I removed one of the shelves to make way for more Disneyland memorabilia. And I think I'm going to get rid of these two shelves eventually, but right now they have some of my Lego sets up there, including the Star Wars bus and the Nightmare Before Christmas set that I got for my birthday last year. We have some Galaxy's Edge items from both California and the Florida parks, and one of my main prized possessions in my entire collection across everything that I own, my 11x14 Ahsoka sketch done by Dave Filoni himself. So he sketched it and signed it. One of my favorite purchases I have ever made in my entire life of collecting any type of item, whether it be an autograph, Hot Toys, comic book, anything in between, and it will always be a main centerpiece of the collection no matter how many times I rearrange things here in this room. The last thing I want to take a look at is my graded comic book wall. So on the right side of my computer screens, I have here some of my favorite graded comic books. Right now, primarily focused on my favorite all-time superhero, Spider-Man. I have been trying to collect all of the initial appearances of Spider-Man from Amazing Fantasy 15 all the way through Amazing Spider-Man number 38, which were all of the times that Steve Ditko did the art for Spider-Man. Now, of course, an Amazing Fantasy 15 is significantly out of my budget range as it is right now, but I have gotten pretty close to getting to that early Spider-Man. The lowest number Spider-Man I currently have in my collection is Amazing Spider-Man number 2, and some of the ones you see here up on the wall are some really super early and first appearances of some of the most major villains in the entire Marvel pantheon. So really super excited to have these. And then randomly, of course, in the top left, I have a Batman vs. Superman comic book signed by Ben Affleck. So he's the only one that's kind of outlier here on the Spider-Man graded comic book shelf. Below the comic books, we have the remainder of my Spider-Man Hot Toys figures. We have actually the newest addition to my Hot Toys collection, which is the Hono Studios Black Suit Spider-Man figure. Another fantastic Spider-Man figure that has some amazing posability due to the material used for the suit. Of course, there are some other black suit Spider-Mans that Hot Toys have made that people out there have said are better than this figure, but this is the representation of him in his original appearance in Secret Wars number 8 and beyond, so I thought he fit in perfectly with my Spider-Man comic book collection. Next to him is the Hot Toys Amazing Spider-Man comic book edition figure that was an extremely limited release about 2 or so years ago. I was happy to purchase this one directly from Hong Kong and have it here in the collection as a figure that I think is pretty well sought after now, since it was extremely limited across the entire world. world. And then we have what is arguably what a lot of people have said is the best MCU Spider-Man figure that's ever been made, which is the red and blue suit from the end of No Way Home with that updated amazing Tom Holland head sculpt with the rolling eyes and everything. I've heard many people say it is the best MCU Hot Toys figure ever made for Spider-Man specifically, and I think I have to agree when it comes to the MCU appearances all together. Thank you so much for watching and joining us here on our collection room tour of June of 2025. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it, as it allows our channel to continue to grow and bring some more awesome content. While you're at it, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification to be notified the second we post brand new videos, including deep dives into theme park history, pop culture history, the world of autograph collecting, comic book collecting, Hot Toys, and anything else in between when it comes to pop culture collectibles. Thank you again for watching, and as always, keep on collecting.